Welcome to the Essence of Liberty podcast. This is the horsemanship podcast where we discuss all things liberty to help you understand, connect, communicate, and play with your horse in a gentle, subtle, and force-free way. We'll get a bit nerdy about equine psychology and learning theory to understand the science behind it all. And we'll also dive into how to motivate your horse, ways to strengthen your relationship, solving those common problems, and how to use liberty as a way to build your horse up physically, mentally, and emotionally, all in half an hour or less. I'm Dr. Nadine Limblum, former equine veterinarian, and I'd like to invite you to join me on this journey as a student of the horse. There are so many incredible benefits of doing liberty with your horse. Not only does it strengthen your relationship in so many different ways, but when you have your horse at liberty and you no longer can communicate with the halter or the bridle or having that physical connection with your horse, you're kind of pushed to really understand how your horse thinks and learns and how he experiences the world. And you're pushed to really listen to him and learn how to understand him on a much deeper level. And you also learn how to communicate with him in a way that doesn't rely on forceful methods. Like you have to really learn how to communicate with them in a very gentle and force-free way. Those are kind of the very obvious benefits of liberty. But today I want to talk about my ultimate favorite reason for why liberty is so absolutely incredible. And that is its ability to empower your horse. Now, before I go on, I think it's important to note that when I speak about liberty, I'm talking about the type of liberty that gives your horse true choice and autonomy in the training, and that he is able to walk away and he's able to come back without any repercussions, and he's not performing through obedience. He's not performing because he's being pressured to do things, and he's not performing because he's afraid of what might happen if he doesn't. So in the horse world, it is quite common to see different methods where the horse is at liberty, quote unquote liberty, where he doesn't have any physical restraints on him, but he's still being forced to do different things. It is quite easy to make a horse perform even without any physical restraints on them. And this is something that I talk about in the very first episode of this podcast. So if you're new here, then warm welcome. I'm so happy that you're here. But if you go back to that first episode, then this episode is going to make a whole lot more sense. So one of the incredible effects that I see of this type of liberty that is based on autonomy and choice is that horses, they become so much more confident and they become really empowered in this work. And that is because they feel in control. And when they feel in control, they feel a lot more safe. And when they feel safe, they're also able to feel playful and curious and confident as well in the training space. Those are precursors to being able to work on powerful movements and collected movements, because when your horse is in that emotional state, those types of movements become a lot more accessible because they come more naturally to your horse. So you have more moments where you can reward those movements and encourage your horse to explore in that direction, which then in turn makes him feel more powerful, which empowers him more. And it's just like a cool cycle of your horse becoming more confident in himself. And this type of liberty will have this effect on any type of horse, but the most rewarding horses and the horses that you see the biggest difference in, you see them come alive, are the horses that are in a state of learned helplessness or shut down, as is another word for it. But those horses that have given up, the horses that are just in this state where they're like a robot and they're just going through the motions and they're doing what they're told. They're not putting up any fuss. You can see in their eyes that the lights are on, but nobody is home. And it's just really sad to see those types of horses because they are in this state of dissociation and they have learned that they're completely out of control and helpless. So suddenly, when you start working in this way and you start giving them back control, you see that spark come back in them. And it's absolutely incredible because you're flipping this learned helplessness on its head. You're saying, you've spent all this time thinking that you're not in control and you've given up and you're just going through the motions. Now you're in control again. And it's so beautiful to see these horses wake up and being able to find their confidence and being able to play and being able to explore different movements and fall in love with movement again. Some of these horses are so-called lazy, or, they lack a personality and they're not playful, and they, all these labels that they get put on them. But this type of liberty, where you give them back control, causes them to wake up again, and suddenly you have this horse that is full of personality and full of play and full of expression, and you're like, where did that come from? And this is honestly one of the most rewarding parts of this type of training, seeing those horses come alive and find themselves again. In the academy, one of the horses that you follow is Nellie. And Nellie is in a state of learned helplessness in the beginning, and she takes a lot longer to go through the first few steps than Levi and Billy, who are both quite confident and sociable types of horses. But Nellie, she takes a little bit longer because she is quite timid, she's quite shut down, she doesn't realize that she has control and that she has a choice, and it takes her a little bit of time to get to that point where she wakes up a little bit. But after her 7th session, I think it is, she starts to get way more playful, way more engaged, and by the end of the sessions, by session 13, she's like a different horse, and she's very engaged, and she's got her playful moments, and she's having little bursts of energy, and she's rearing here and there, and she's so sweet. So it was such a cool journey for her to go from that shut down state to a more playful and alive state. So how does all of this begin? How do you begin giving control back to your horse? Because this can be a little bit scary. Like the sound of giving your horse control, because when we grow up, like from the very beginning, we're told, "Ooh, don't let your horse be in control. You have to be in control over your horse. You have to be the leader over your horse, show him who's boss," etc., etc. Oh my God, it goes on. And this notion of giving control back to your horse, it doesn't mean that he can walk all over the top of you. It doesn't mean that he can do absolutely whatever he wants. It doesn't mean that he can be dangerous. It doesn't mean that you don't have any boundaries in place to keep you safe at all. It means that your horse thinks that he's making things happen. It's a little bit of reverse psychology, I guess. He thinks that he is causing you to do different things. He thinks that he is influencing you and influencing the session in itself. He knows that you are listening to him because it's a two-way conversation. Giving your horse control is not about letting him do absolutely whatever and letting him walk all over the top of you and being dangerous. It's just about him feeling like his behaviors is causing different things to happen. And the way that I like to begin this, and the way that I teach in the academy and even in the free masterclass that you can find on my website if you haven't already, there's a free masterclass there that goes through a bit of this. But the first thing that I like to do is this initiation of contact exercise. And this exercise is a way of establishing a two-way communication between the two of you, so that he knows that you are responding to all of his little communications, all of his movements, that it's got a consistent response from you depending on what he does. And when they start to realize that they do get this response from you and that they can influence you, they immediately become a lot more confident in themselves, because they know that they're causing different things to happen. So this exercise is all about causing your horse to come up to you instead of the other way around. So instead of walking up to your horse and being like, all right, now we're going to start the session and now I'm going to ask you to do things, you are inviting him in a very polite and non-threatening way to begin the session, so that your horse is the one that walks up to you instead of the other way around. It's a very interesting exercise, and I've done it now so many times with so many different horses, and it's just got a really, really interesting and cool effect on them. And it's hard for me to describe it properly like this over a podcast, but in the masterclass, I can go through it a little bit easier for you with like a diagram, and I show you with a horse as well. So if you're interested in that exercise, then head to the masterclass. And the next thing that I do with the horses is that I start to introduce food rewards in a very consistent and systematic way. And this is again to show the horse that he is making things happen. His behaviors is causing me to give him a food reward, and he can start to seek to try to find the different ways of causing me to give him a food reward. It's really, really interesting because when you are working with positive reinforcement in this way, and the horse feels like he's creating different outcomes, then they start getting confident, they start exploring, they get really curious, they feel safe in their environment, and it just all goes on from there. So that is my personal favorite effect of liberty, this way that it can empower horses, it can make shutdown horses come alive again, it can make lazy horses fall in love with movement again, it can make spooky horses that are lacking confidence and are, worried about people or worried about their environment, it can make them a lot more confident as well. And just working with them in a way where they're not threatened all the time, when they're not pushed into different things, where they really are choosing to work with you, and you know that when they do choose to work with you, it's actually an authentic yes, and it's an authentic choice. It's not them just doing it because they have to, or because they're tolerating it, or because they, would know that, if they don't do it, then you're going to pester them or anything like that. So that's really, that's my personal favorite. I mean, there's so many awesome benefits of liberty, but this is my personal favorite, just this ability of liberty to empower them. And then also when they're in that state of being more confident, being more playful, being able to work with the postures and the playful movements that come out of that emotional state. It is just so much fun, and I really wanted to share that, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that specific effect because it's something that when I was doing quote-unquote liberty, I'm doing little air quotes here with my hands that you can't see, but quote-unquote liberty back in the day when I was working with mainly pressure and release, I wasn't getting that from my horses. They weren't empowered. If anything, they were just like, ugh. Their feet were made of lead, and they were lazy. I mean, quote unquote lazy. They did not want to move. They would do everything to the least of their effort. And when I discovered this different way of thinking about liberty with giving them choice and in motivating them in different ways, then, suddenly they were playful and they weren't lazy. They actually liked to move. They liked to play. They liked to rear. They liked to jump. And they were able to carry themselves in a way that was true collection, and it wasn't just like a contorted form of collection where they're just trying to do what I'm asking them to do. Like the actual collection and those postures and the movements were coming out of an emotional state. And that's where you know that those postures are actually true. They're not just a contortion. They're not just your horse putting themselves in a particular shape. They're actually useful for something. But that's getting onto a different topic, and I'd like to make an episode about collection and working on posture and everything at Liberty. So stay tuned for that one because I'd like to do that one soon. But that is it from me for this episode. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I hope it has inspired you. And if you haven't tried Liberty already with your horse, I hope it has encouraged you to perhaps give it a go because it is absolutely life-changing. And if you're already well on your journey to Liberty, then I hope it has given you some food for thought and things to think about. Thank you for being here, and thank you for listening until the very end. If this is helping you and if it's inspiring you, then feel free to share it with your family and friends, because if it's helping you, then chances are it can help someone else in your circle as well, and more horses around the world. There is so much more to come, so stay tuned for that. But until next time, don't forget to stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep exploring the possibilities of liberty with your horse. I'll see you in the next one.